Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and in this video I'm going to answer the question, should you hire a ghostwriter? And also I'm going to walk through the pros and cons of working with a ghostwriter. So you're thinking about working with a ghostwriter. Maybe you've had this dream of writing a book, you've been thinking about doing it for a while, maybe you've been putting it off for a while, and you're like, man, I gotta get this done, but I just do not have the time. That's probably one of the most common excuses that I hear from people on why they don't write a book. And so naturally, when you think about that, I don't have time, well, why don't I just have someone else write the book for me? So if you're busy, if you're in a high-paying job or a top corporate job, or if you're running a company, chances are you do not have time, or at least you don't think you have time to write and publish a book. So naturally, the thought becomes, let me hire a ghostwriter. In this video, I want to walk through what are ghostwriters, how much do they cost? I'm going to walk through the pros and cons of working with a ghostwriter. And then lastly, I'm going to give you my personal recommendation after seeing thousands of people go through the process of writing and publishing a book. So first off, what are ghostwriters? So ghostwriters are someone who writes a book on behalf of someone else. This might be an individual or this might be a company, and there's kind of some popular examples of both. But you see a lot of books that are written by big time CEOs. Sometimes those are written by a ghostwriter. Maybe it's a memoir or things like that. But usually it's a professional writer who gets paid to write, and they can write the book on behalf of someone else. Now that leads into kind of perfectly, what does it cost? It depends on kind of who you go with. So do you go with an individual or do you go with a company? But I would expect to pay at a minimum $10,000 and probably more like 25, 35, 50, maybe even as much as 100 grand or $250,000 really on the high end if you want a good ghostwriter. And the fact of the matter is, good ghostwriters cost money. Okay, and also good ghostwriters are in short supply. And if you go into an individual, sometimes you can find someone cheaper, but just know you get what you pay for. So you want to look at the track record and make sure that that person truly is good. And in my opinion, I'll talk about this in the pros and cons, the toughest part of ghostwriting is capturing your voice. So truly capturing your voice and saying what you want to say. So it takes someone who's really skilled to be able to do that. Now let's talk through pros and cons of working with a ghostwriter. So first, let's start with pros. There's a couple main pros of working with a ghostwriter. And the first one is kind of the obvious one. You don't have to spend time actually writing the book. So if done properly, working with a ghostwriter can save you a whole bunch of time on this process. Now, this is if you're prepared and if you have a really good ghostwriter. Secondly, the writing quality might be higher, okay? So if you're thinking about hiring a ghostwriter, chances are you probably don't think that you're a good writer, and maybe it's true. Maybe you aren't a good writer, and so the quality might be better working with a ghostwriter. Now, I would say kind of on the flip side, if you have a good editor can make your writing better, but right out of the gate, if the person knows your voice and if they're good, the writing could be better. This is kind of a toss-up, so it really depends on the type of ghostwriter that you get and how good they are, but the writing might be better. Third, if you're a non-native English speaker or someone with a disability so you're unable to type or things like that, this can make the process easier. Obviously, either way, it's going to be much easier for someone else to write the book, and maybe you can dictate or maybe you can write out the stories or things like that in your native language, but sometimes a good ghostwriter can help with the process and help write a better quality book in a faster timeline in those instances. Now let's switch gears and talk about the cons of working with a ghostwriter. Now, the first one and the obvious one is it's not your work. So you didn't write this book, someone else did. And now that's fine if it's truly your ideas and if the book is well written. But I just want to pause here for a second because I have heard so many horror stories from entrepreneurs and people who have went with a ghostwriter or went through a ghostwriting company. What ends up happening is they lose a year, year and a half, 2 years of their life, and then they end up biting the bullet and say, oh my gosh, I've just got to write this myself. And I know CEOs at huge companies that have paid a whole lot of money to these companies and also to individuals to ghostwrite a good book, and then they just read it. And if you care about quality, a lot of times you read that first draft and you're like, this just isn't me, this just isn't good. But guess what? You've had to pay someone, you've had to go through the process, you worked through it for a year, and you end up at the end of that process and you're like, this just isn't good, I'm gonna have to do this. So you can end up wasting a whole lot of time. That's one of the big cons. It's also not your work, and in a lot of cases, it's not in your voice. And that leads me to another con, which is this process takes a really long time. So, kind of the dream or what everyone thinks about is, hey, I'll just, have a quick conversation with someone and then I'll pass them that stuff and then they'll go away and they'll come back with a finished manuscript. That's just not the way that it works. You're going to spend probably 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 hours in the interview process. Then you've got to make sure that you're going through the actual process. You read the first draft. A lot of times it might not be what you want because you've got to communicate super clearly to make sure that it is in the voice that you want. It is including the stories that you want and all those things. So what seems like a thing that's going to save you a bunch of time ends up costing you a whole lot more time. Now, the last couple of cons around working with a ghostwriter is, first and foremost, it's very, very expensive. So if you don't have 10, 20, 50, 100 grand to shell out on working with a ghostwriter, I would say don't think about it, because if it's less than the 10 grand mark, they're probably not any good. And so it's more of an unproven commodity, and you've got to pay for additional services. So writing the book is just the first step. And so I think sometimes when people get confused, they think ghostwriter and they think, oh, okay, I'm going to pay someone to write the book and that's basically the process. But now the process really just starts. It's like you're moving into cover design, you're moving into editing, you're moving into publishing, like all those other things and all those other costs that you have to consider that will be in addition to working with a ghostwriter. So there you have it. Those are the pros and cons to working with a ghostwriter. And I want to end with kind of my personal opinion. Chances are you may or may not have picked up on it. Hopefully you didn't. But my personal opinion, so I've seen thousands of people go through the writing and publishing a book process. And I know, like, I am a busy CEO of a multiple 7-figure company. We've been on the Inc. 5000 list the last 3 years in a row as one of the 5,000 fastest growing private companies in America. Like, I am very busy and I still take the time to write my own books. And so I've seen both sides of it. I've seen our ability at Self-Publishing School to work with students and get them to actually write the book themselves. And I've seen horror stories from so many people who have chose to go the ghostwriter route, and they've just been burned. They waste a bunch of money, they waste years of their life, all those things, and they end up having to do it themselves anyway. And so the honest truth is, it would be way easier for me at Self-Publishing School to scale my company if I charged 35 grand, 100 grand, whatever, to ghostwrite books. But I personally don't believe in the method, I don't believe in the model, and I don't believe that it's easy to create happy customers, right? I want to make sure, long term, if you're growing a business, you got to have happy customers. I think it's really hard to do that ghostwriting books for others. So that's why I've chosen not to do that at Self-Publishing School, because if I could figure it out and if I did believe in the model, we would be doing it at Self-Publishing School and we'd probably be growing a whole lot faster. So I do not recommend working with a ghostwriter. Almost like this is one of those 99.9% of the times. Don't work with a ghostwriter. Instead, speed up the process, right? And that's what we're all about at Self-Publishing School, is let's give you tools, let's give you templates, let's give you all these things so that you can write the book, but we're going to shave off 25%, maybe even 50% of the time in that process. And then you can have people on your team, if you have a team, or you can build a book production team or all those things, like then you can have people help. Now, the only exception to this rule, and I almost hesitate to even talk about this, but my only compromise for people who are like, Chandler, I absolutely cannot do this, and I've got 10, 25, 30 grand, like I want to pay someone, I still hesitate to recommend that they hire a ghostwriter because I just know that it often doesn't work. And so here's my only compromise, is I say you, as the person wanting to write this book, go through a mind mapping and outline process. So spend time to really nail that mind map, really nail that outline, and you're super involved at the beginning. And then preferably you have a writer or someone that creates content on your team already. So for your company, for your business, they can help with that content creation. So the big advantage here and why this sometimes works is they already know your methodology. They're already familiar with working with you. They know your content standards, all those things. So that person can then help out. And then you get super involved as soon as the first couple of chapters come in, and then again when the first draft comes in. And I know this probably sounds like, hey, this is a lot of time, but yes, that's what it takes to do it right, and you're gonna save yourself a whole lot of time by doing it that way. So get super involved at the beginning, right after you get the first couple chapters, and then again at the end, and you can work with an editor to mold that book that's been created somewhat for you into a really great book. So there you have it, once and for all, answering the question, should I hire a ghostwriter? Should I work with a ghostwriting company? And hopefully this has helped, and hopefully this has kind of given you some clarity on what to do next and how to get your book written. So if you found this video helpful and you're interested in doing more research, check out our full post. We got a full post that explains kind of all the details I covered in this video, but also more. It's at self-publishingschool.com ghostwriting. So we go through the pros, the cons, and everything you need to know there as well. As always, if we can help you at Self-Publishing School, book a call with my team. Let's chat about your book, your goals for your book, your challenges with your book, your next steps, like how we might be able to help. All you have to do is go to self-publishingschool.com/apply and book a call with the team at that link. Now, I also have 2 resources for you right now that are going to be super helpful along your book journey. So I've got a free copy of my book published. This is kind of the 10,000 foot view of the process that we teach at Self-Publishing School. You can get a free physical copy. All you have to do is pay shipping and handling. Just go to self-publishingschool.com/published. Or if you want to kind of learn more about our process in video form, check out some free training that we have. That's spsfreetraining.com. I'd love to hear your takeaways from this video. Comment, let me know. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think ghostwriting works? Have you seen it work for yourself? Or
maybe do you have some horror stories around working with a ghostwriter or maybe a ghostwriting company?
Please share those in the comments. I'd love to hear those. Either way, take 2 minutes right now. Yes, seriously, take 2 minutes. Scroll below. Comment on this video. As always, click the like button and also click the subscribe button. So subscribe to the Self-Publishing School YouTube channel here and also to the Self-Publishing School podcast. We have amazing interviews coming out every single week on that podcast. So claim your free copy of my book published or check out the free training if you're interested in that. And thanks so much. I'll see you in the next video. Talk soon.